Our Parsha opens on the heels of some very strange stories. Rivka, after years of barrenness, finally conceives, but the Torah tells us the children struggled within her. Even before birth, Yaakov and Esau are at odds. Two nations, two temperaments in conflict. As they grow, that conflict does not soften. We read about a family filled with rivalry, jealousy, and heartbreak. Yaakov buys the birthright for a bowl of lentils. Later, with his mother's help, he wears his brother's clothing, claims his father's blessing through deception. And when Esau realizes what happened, his jealousy burns so fiercely that Yaakov must flee his home. Meanwhile, Yitzchak faces his own trials. Like his father Avram, he encounters famine and goes down toward Gerar. There, fearful of being killed because of his wife's beauty, he tells Avimelech that Rivka is his sister. Once again, fear leads to half-truths and suspicion fills the air. We are filled with stories of jealousy, insecurity, or fear between brothers, between nations, even within the self. And yet, we get next to a story that seems almost serene. Yitzchak is digging wells. No arguments, no deceit, no thunder from heaven, just the sound of shovels in the dust. That's where the Torah stops and lingers. But as so often happens in the Torah, what seems ordinary is anything but. The text says, "And he acquired flocks and herds and many servants, and the Philistines envied him. They stopped up the wells that his father's servants had dug in the days of Avram, filling them with earth." Seforno comments that since Avimelech had forbidden his people to harm Yitzchak physically, out of fear of God, their jealousy had to find an outlet. So they turned to destruction, giving vent to envy by destroying what gave life. Or Chaim takes it further. The wicked cannot stand to see the righteous succeed. He notes that the Torah adds the details. They sealed them and covered them with dust to show that after Avram's death, the Philistines placed rocks on the site where he had found water. Their hatred was not just to erase wells, but to bury the very memory of goodness. Yitzchak, therefore, has to dig them anew, not just reopen them, but recreate them. And then comes the mystical layer, offered by Toldot Yitzchak. The wells symbolize the souls Avram had brought near, those he had inspired to faith. When Avram died, the Philistines filled them with earth, meaning they led these souls back into corruption. Yitzchak, through his spiritual labor, redigs them. He brings people back to faith, revives what had been suffocated by envy and fear. He gives them the same names that his father had given, restoring memory, restoring identity. Still, the struggle continues. The shepherds of Gerar quarrel with Yitzchak's servants. The water is ours. Yitzchak names that well as Esek, strife. So they go and dig another well. Again, there's dispute, and he names it Sitna, hostility. Finally, they dig a third, and the Torah says they did not quarrel over it, and he called it Rehovot, for now the Lord has given us space. The Ramban, Nachmanides, and Tur HaAruch both see here a prophetic pattern. The three wells, they say, correspond to the three temples in Jerusalem. The first destroyed by enemies, the second consumed by internal hatred, but the third, still to come, will symbolize Rehovot, wide and everlasting peace. Just as Yitzchak persists through each conflict, continuing to dig, so too will his descendants keep rebuilding until the day divine blessings flow freely beyond envy and fear. And then after all this, the same Avimelech who once drove Yitzchak away comes to him with his officer Fichol and advisor Achuzat, asking to make a covenant. Yitzchak, bewildered, says, "Why have you come to me, seeing that you hated me and sent me away?" Ramban, Nachmanides, imagines Avimelech's responding defensively. "We did you no harm. We protected you. We even sent you away in peace." But then he takes it deeper. The king remembers the covenant between Avram and his forefathers, and now fears that, having broken it by sending Yitzchak away, Yitzchak might return with divine backing to destroy them. This treaty, then, is not a gesture of goodwill alone. It's an act of dread before righteousness. Ramban even notes that Avimelech's claim of kindness, that he did no evil, was their attempt to rewrite history, to absolve themselves by comparing their envy to restraint. Or Chaim, ever the moral psychologist, explains further. Avimelech argues that even letting Yitzchak depart with his wealth intact was an act of kindness. Keeping a man whole when you could have harmed him, that, in their minds, was goodness. Yitzchak listens, perhaps recognizing that even imperfect motives can lead toward peace. And so, rather than rebuke him, he chooses generosity. The Torah says he made them a feast and they ate and drank. The next morning they part in peace, and the very same day his servants arrive announcing, "We have found water," as if heaven himself affirms this reconciliation. When envy gives way to peace, blessing begins to flow again. Through all these layers, fear, deception, rivalry, and reconciliation, Yitzchak stands as the quiet hero. He doesn't fight with words or strength. He digs again and again. Where others destroy, he rebuilds. Where others fill with dust, he brings forth water. Parshat Toldot may open on the heels of jealousy that drives brothers apart, and it ends with patience that brings enemies together. It teaches that while envy destroys, persistence creates. While fear isolates, blessing multiplies. And perhaps this is Yitzchak's legacy. Not the noise of argument, but the quiet insistence that life must go on. That goodness, like water, can always be uncovered. So as we read Toldot, we might ask ourselves, are we filling wells or are we digging them? Are we covering what gives life, or are we uncovering it in ourselves and others? Because every act of faith, every word of kindness, every choice to rebuild instead of resent, that's well drawn from Avram's time. It's how we keep the waters of blessing flowing, even in a world that still too often throws dust. Jealousy and destruction for no reason have no place in our world.